So I said, I'm coming. And I stopped and I said, what's that? He said, what's what? And I looked up and there was a white light, and next thing I know, I'm in Tucumcari, New Mexico, and there's a police car with his lights on saying, hey man, what are you doing here looking like that? When I say losers hate winners, it's the people who tell you they want more, get quiet when you're winning, but refuse to do anything to help themselves but are miserable. Every time you level up, and I hate the term level up, but I mean, basically every time you do something better, they hate it. But they haven't tried. Ultimately, this book is about trying to tell people how to find the peace within themselves so they can stand up in their own story. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the book, it asks the question again, okay, who are you?
Welcome back to the Wealthy Cowboy Show. Today we have a real treat for you. Dally Yarborough. He's actually an author, a best-selling author, I guess now. His book came out not that long ago, A Night In Tucumcari. Kind of his life story, and we're going to kind of go over that too. But he's also a business owner, has multiple different businesses connected to the horse world, the ranching world, all that stuff. So we're going to get into it. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. I'm glad you could come on. I haven't had very many authors on here. I've had a few. There's not that many in our world.
Well, I don't know as one book considers me an author as of yet.
It is. You can add that to end of your name, best-selling author.
I'll add it to my LinkedIn.
So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so
start wherever you want.
I grew up in a little town about 90 miles southwest of Las Vegas called Kingman, Arizona. It's up in the northwestern corner of Arizona.
That's the last town before you go into Las Vegas, right? If you're driving up there from here.
Yeah, and if you ask me, you best just keep going unless you're just stopping for fuel. At least that's the memories I have of it. I grew up in that small town in poverty, a family that just was there. Never really felt like much of a family. Just you just existed, and that's the way life was. And so I dropped out of high school when I was 15 years old, and just started surviving. In that little town, that's what you did. You figured out a way to live and survive. And I just always had this sneaking feeling that there was something better than breaking your back with a shovel. Mm-hmm. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but
what did your family do? What kind of were you exposed to? Just like manual labor around there, or a lot of unemployment, or what did it look like?
Yeah, so the town didn't offer much. My dad always worked, hard worker. My grandpa was on ranches. My dad was on ranches. My uncles and were cattle, horse people. My dad was a PRCA bronc rider. My uncle was a PRCA bronc rider. Uncles that PRCA team ropers.
So everybody's kind of ranching, rodeoing.
You worked construction when you weren't doing that. And as my dad got older and couldn't break his back that way anymore, he operated equipment. Us kids were, from the time we were 13, 14 years old, we were out there digging ditches and footers for concrete pours for houses. Not with equipment, with pick and shovel through the back-breaking Arizona rock and earth. That's just what was expected of you. And I remember my freshman year, my parents told me, hey, you're going to start paying $30 a week and rent, and you're going to live by our rules. And I thought, labor before license, that doesn't sound fair. So I dropped out of high school, moved out.
And you didn't want to pay rent and have to live by the rules. If you're going to pay rent, you might as well go.
I was going to go live by my rules.
Yeah.
That was the thought process anyway, when you're 15. Of course, not thinking so smart at those times, So I dropped out of high school and went to work and made my pathway towards what I thought was a better life. Took some EMT classes, thought maybe I wanted to be an EMT. And then right before I turned 18, I was living with my high school girlfriend, and she was in high school. And a big steel mill came into town, and they built a massive construction project. And built this big steel mill. It was going to bring a lot of jobs to the little area that they really needed. And because I had my EMT background, they offered me a security guard position. So I would be security and respond to accidents or incidents on the job site. And quickly.
And you're just right at 18 at this point.
Barely 18. So I actually graduated from my EMT courses before I was even 18, but I had to wait to take the state exam. So,
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to, I didn't know. I was like, you're saying you were taking that stuff. I didn't know you could, I figured you had to be 18 to be certified. Real quick, if you're a listener of this show and you're serious about leveling up your income, your mindset, and your life in 2026, you need to join the Wealthy Cowboy VIP community. It's where the real action happens. You'll get exclusive discounts from our sponsors, VIP merch deals, early access to episodes, private Q&As, and I even pull questions from the group to ask our guests on the show. It's a crew of driven Western people pushing each other to grow. The link is in the description. Go join now and see what's happening inside.
Yeah, so they let me take the EMT courses at the local community college, but I had to wait till I turned 18. So I was working out at a Blue Beacon truck wash out on I-40, scrubbing down semi-trucks and waiting to that day I could take that EMT exam. And they held it in January, and my 18th birthday fell right at the beginning of January. So I went and took the courses, and I passed it. The steel mill offered me the job, and so I took it. I wasn't at that steel mill maybe 3 months as a security guard and EMT responder when they started asking me to go out and do the safety inspections on the job site. They had a corporate safety guy that would show up, but he would never leave his office. So they said, hey, you mind going and doing the field work? So I started studying up on some OSHA rules and manuals and started going out there and doing the job walks. And
is that usually, though, do they usually get an EMT to do, or a security guy to do that, or that's like a whole different thing, isn't it?
No, small town mentality, I would say. There wasn't a lot in the work pool to choose from in the little town I grew up in. So when their corporate
they're
guy,
like, you're doing good at this, can you do this too?
Well, exactly. And they had brought their corporate guy in from Minnesota, and like I said, he wouldn't leave the office and go out and do any field walks. So kind of use what's at your disposal is kind of the way this big corporate company thought. So they saw I was out there at least doing the checks on the first aid boxes and stuff. So they said, you think you could handle doing this? We'll run you through some classes and stuff. So I did some classes and started going out and doing the safety inspections, doing what the corporate guy wouldn't do. And
was that like, at this point, were you making like, good money? Did you, as a 18-year-old kid coming from nothing, were you like, man, I've made it now, or not yet?
A matter of fact, in the book, I said I was sitting back one day thinking, man, I'm making the best money in my life. And I think I was making $19 an hour.
Yeah.
So
that was a lot back then.
It was a lot of money back then, because I knew some union laborers that were over in Las Vegas working on the casinos that were making $19 an hour. And I was in that little town, so I thought I was doing good.
Well, it's just like comparison. I mean, especially when you're 18 making 19, back when would that have been, like in the...
So that would have been 96.
Yeah, and like, so your friend group, the people you're around, are probably don't even have a job, or they're working for minimum wage. So you're probably like a high roller to all those people.
Yeah, well, like I said, working out at Blue Beacon, I think we were making $12.95 was good to be a shift supervisor at the time. So when I went from washing trucks to $19 an hour, it was a big jump for me.
Yeah,
I thought I was on top of the world. But then that's where the downside came. I moved up with this corporation so quick that they handed me a corporate American Express and said, "Hey, we want you to start teaching everybody on the project CPR classes, so go get certified." So I did that too, to become a CPR first aid instructor, and started teaching everybody. Then they said, "We want you to start procuring emergency rescue equipment." I didn't even know what procure meant back then. I had to go look it up, but I figured it out. And so I started going to ambulance companies and fire departments and buying their used or equipment that they didn't want anymore. And
you're just saying yes to anything they offered.
Anything that would give me an opportunity to move up. I mean, at this point, I had at least went and did an online education class, and it wasn't a GED, it was a high school program, but it was through the mail. Because remember, we don't have internet yet. So I had a high school diploma and I had my EMT. I just wanted an opportunity. And so if there was a challenge, I wanted to find the solution. I wanted to say yes. So I started doing everything they said, and pretty soon I get a call from the corporate accountant who's sitting on the job site, and he calls me and he says, "Hey, explain these expenses on your expense sheet." Yeah, they don't take the American Express when you buy used equipment, so I'm putting them on the expense sheet to get reimbursed. He says, "We'll just use your American Express card and go pull the cash off your American Express card and pay yourself back that way." I'm 18, sounded legit to me. I don't know. So I did that for about 3 or 4 months, and I get called back into the corporate office again, and there sits the accountant, but 5 of the other top brass, and they're accusing me of embezzling money from the corporation, and they canned me. About 2 months later, I was arrested in that little town, and they broadcast my name all over the place. Embezzlement, $14,000. I mean, it was in the newspaper. If a story was untrue in that town, it spread quick. And whatever reputation I had went down real fast. I couldn't get a job, no money for an attorney. Frankly, think the parents thought I did it. Why would a steel mill lie? You know, why would a corporation lie? So, unfortunately, I was pressed into a situation where I had to accept a plea deal, start paying back $14,000 for something I didn't do.
With no job.
With no job, and couldn't get a job in that little town. And I had a buddy that had high school rodeoed with us, bareback rider, that had left and was living with a girl over in Derby, Kansas.
We skipped over that part. So were you rodeoing your whole childhood kind of deal? DX Trailer Sales is based out of Lubbock, Texas, and it's definitely not just a trailer dealership. If you are involved in the Western way of life, and if you're listening to this show, you probably are, they have something you need. From trailers for a day working cowboy to a full-time cattle hauler to hay trailers for a farmer or rancher to arena drags, rope and chutes, and feeders for the rodeo cowboy or cowgirl. They also deal in every kind of hay any of your animals could ever need. Literally anything you need for farming, ranching, or rodeoing, they have something for you. And it's gonna be at a super affordable price. Besides all that, everyone you deal with there is super friendly and helpful. We just got new custom flatbeds built for our pickups, and I also got probably the coolest trailer you've ever seen built. And you can stay tuned for a video we're gonna do, and it's gonna show all of that and some more of their products also. So check out DX Trailer Sales on Facebook or dxtrailers.com.
So me and my brothers, we rodeoed through high school rodeos, started in junior rodeos and rode in high school rodeo, saddle bronc, mostly bareback. I stuck more to bareback, the occasional bulls. But in Arizona, it's different than it is out here in the Midwest, in that the high school rodeos are extremely far and, few. So you have to travel a long way to get to one. My daughter's in Region 10 here, and there's 50, 60, 70 kids in every event. There might be 4 in an event in Arizona back when we were rodeoing. But my buddy had moved out to Derby, Kansas, and was riding bareback horses, and I didn't have a place to go, and so I called him. He said, "You can come out and live with me." He was older than me. So I moved out there, loaded up my pickup, and drove out to Derby, Kansas, and for a year I just rodeoed with him, riding bareback horses and chasing the dream, and I didn't even realize I was getting the momentum behind me that I did, and we both made the regional finals that year that they held in Dodge City, Kansas. And that was the night the incident happened with Tucumcari, New Mexico. And that's the reason for the title of the book. But it's kind of a strange situation where there's a loss of time between Dodge City, Kansas, and that night at the rodeo. I'd won the rodeo that night and won the regional finals. And my buddy Chad was right behind me in second place, and there was a tornado warning that shut the rest of the rodeo down for a while. So by the time we went and collected our checks and buckles for the night, it was about midnight. I saw 3 team ropers, Native American team ropers that I knew from Arizona. So I went to say hi to them before we loaded it up in the truck. And about 12:40 in the morning, and I was walking towards the truck, and I heard Brad yell at me, "Hey, fiance's going to be pissed. We ain't home." So I said, I'm coming. And I stopped and I said, "What's that?" And he said, "What's what?" And I looked up, and there was a white light. And next thing I know, I'm in Tucumcari, New Mexico, and there's a police car with his lights on saying, "Hey, man, what are you doing here looking like that?" And I was sitting against the phone booth with one boot on, but the other boot was sitting next to me. No shirt. It was gone, nowhere to be found. Brand new belt buckle that I just won, the one I'm wearing today. Cowboy hat was on, and a bag of Taco Bell with a half-eaten burrito and a taco in there. No wallet, no remember of time, nothing. So the cop has me come over, and he looks through everything, comes back from dispatch. He's all clear. You can let him go. To my surprise, the officer said, "Hey, you're free to go." I thought, Tucumcari, New Mexico on the side of his car. So I said to him, "Hey, what day is it?" He said, "August 29th. I said, "What time?" He said, "About 1:40 in the morning." 1:40 in the morning. So I walked off and ran over to the phone booth that I was on and called back to my buddy's fiance's house. And she says, "Where are you at, Dally?" And I said, "Tucumcari, New Mexico." She said, "Well, Brad's at this number calling." So I wrote it down in dust in the phone booth, and I called him up, and he said, "Where are you at?" And I told him. He said, "Tucumcari, New Mexico, are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's no way, Dally." He goes, "You ain't been gone long enough to make it to Tucumcari, New Mexico." So we've got a cop in Tucumcari, New Mexico, recording me there at 1:40 in the morning. Now, keep in mind there's a daylight savings time change, so about 2 hours after 12:40. And him witnessing me at 12:40 and them at 1:40, and there's no airports. There was no jet. I didn't have a car with me. So in about a 2-hour time, from the best we can make sense, I went from Dodge City, Kansas to Tucumcari, New Mexico. Now, people will laugh and joke and say that I have a relationship with aliens and all of those kind of things. And I actually have cousins that grew up in the White Mountains of Arizona that were part of the movie Fire in the Sky that was from the 80s, where apparently one of them got abducted by aliens. Now, I say the alien part because I've had to take a lot of razzing over that story of Tucumcari, New Mexico. And what I find comical about it is that I don't have an explanation, but I also know I wasn't abducted by aliens. Loss of time, unexplained things that I can't explain back then, mental trauma, maybe from the things that I endured growing up. But the reason I tell that story and I really break it down in the book as far as the childhood drama and lack of family or what at least I felt like a family should look like, the lack of love and care in the family that I was raised in, brought me to that night. And the reason I tell that is because it was that night that showed me this metaphorical cube that my mind had been building my whole life, that I refer to almost as like a Rubik's Cube. And what I found out that night and what it showed me that it's multidimensional, but that it has 6 colors, 6 sides. And then I would eventually come to find out through the growth of my mental abilities and my businesses and my wealth is that it has 6 dimensions. And each one of those colors represents something in the way that my mind interacts with life. And that's what I think is different about this book and why it's become a bestseller and why so many interviews that I've done really zone into, okay, well, how did you get to generational wealth from poverty? And the only way that I could explain it, and like I was talking to you before we started here, was the book would not have even been able to be written had I not told it from the story of the way my mind works and interacts with life. It was the only way that it could happen. And what I found out was that Tucumcari was really just telling me that I needed to pay attention to what my mind had absorbed and telling me that that wasn't the threshold. That wasn't the final ending, that there was more that I could utilize within inside my mind to do better, to become better, to break the DNA cycle that I had been handed throughout my entire bloodline, who have really never done anything financially or family wise. And that night allowed me to see the full cube and how it works. What I learned was that red is almost a prison where I lock memories away. Don't throw the key away, because it's those memories in the red that sometimes gives you the fire in the belly to use the other colors, such as blue, which is strategy. I've come to realize that yellow is drive, purple is deep thought, green's love, white is clarity. The goal is always white. Like a Rubik's Cube, when it's turning and the mind's working, it ultimately, I believe in my mind, what it's trying to do is align it with white, so that I get the clear moments to where I can make the decisions and the moves that I need to make, and progress forward. And I think that night was telling me, hey, that you have this ability, you have this mechanism within your mind that you can use for better. And the levels started to show me that when we're born, your mind's kind of in a reactionary mode. Everything that happens from the time you're a baby, you're reactionary. And as you grow and you learn things, you become resistant. All you know is what you know. So your mind becomes resistant. And that's what I realized, that I had been living in level 1 and 2 of the mind, and that I was starting to see, and especially Tucumcari, that there was other levels. And so the next level that I moved to around that time, I think, was level 3. And that's when I really started understanding that there was more to life, and that I needed to make some different changes and some different moves. About that time, I moved west, back over to Las Vegas, and started working in the union at a big state line outlet mall as a labor foreman, and I continued to rodeo from there. And during the level 3 process, which is recalibration, I started to realize that my mind was building strategies within, and to utilize some of the things that I already knew from level 1 and level 2, which was to, one, not be emotionally attached to your emotions. I always tease my wife. She says, well, who do you think's stuck in level 2? And I said, people who are emotionally attached to their emotions. And she says, well, what's that even mean? I said, it's self-explanatory, I think. I think people who are emotionally attached to their emotions are unable to progress to the different levels, whether it be wealth, family, business, because they're too absorbed with what's going on in the past instead of looking towards the future. And I think I spent a lot of time there. And I think I spent a lot of time in recalibration level 3 as well.
And like you're too afraid. You think you're afraid what people think. You're afraid of that you can't do it, or you can't do it because you feel a certain way about it, or something, like just limiting beliefs kind of, or something. Absolutely,
all of that. And I also think that level 2 is where people reside when they're comfortable and they want to stay comfortable. And I just had a conversation with a friend of mine. We were fishing up in Casper, Wyoming, and he was talking about a business that he's wanting to start. He's been wanting to start this business for 10 years, and he's done nothing but file some LLC paperwork in those 10 years. And I said, well, when are you going to get it done? And I've said that to him for years. And I said, you're living in level 2. He said, well, explain that to me. I said, I have, but this is the way I'm going to explain it to you this time, so maybe you'll understand. I said, you ever seen a warm pile of cow crap? He said, yeah. And I said, what's it usually full of? He said, flies. I said, exactly. I said, you know why they're there? He says, why? I said, because they're comfortable. I said, that's how so many people in this world live their life. They'd rather sit in that warm pile of cow crap than get up and do something different and better themselves, because they're afraid. And I would rather be afraid than sit in a warm pile of cow crap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people that are stuck in level 2, that's part of it. They're just okay being comfortable. They have aspirations. They want to do better. They want to do different things, but that comfort holds them back. Many of my friends have asked me after they've seen me grow from nothing to riches and then riches to generational wealth. I was on a trip last summer, and one of them said, we were all having some beers, and one of them said, well, Dally, what's your risk tolerance? Is there anything you won't do? There's a story I tell in the book. I'm about 4 years old, and my dad was rushed to emergency surgery, and me and my older brother were left at home outside of town on the little ranch we lived on. No neighbors for a long ways away. I was 4. My brother's 19 months older than me, and we were left there for about a week, and we ate cat food. And that memory came back to me years later. I'd kind of suppressed it. And after Tucumcari, it was shown to me for a reason, I believe, to remember it, not to forget it. And
that you can do anything.
It's what survival looked like, right? And I don't know why I said this, but last summer when they said, Dally, what's your risk tolerance? It just came out of my mouth. I said, cat food. And they said, well, what's that mean? And I had to think about it for a minute. But what it meant is that no matter what I do, no matter what risks I take, it's never going to be cat food again. And I was just talking to somebody in the gym this morning there in Stephenville, and he was talking about wanting to open up his own business. He says, you got any advice for somebody who is just starting out? I said, find your cat food. And I truly believe that if people dig deep down inside and find their cat food, they'll get out of that comfort zone. Because whatever the worst it's ever been, highly unlikely it's ever going to be that bad again, even if they take the chance on something.
Well, and everybody's heart's different. Everybody has their own perspective of like, I think my level of hard and risk and like rock bottom is probably way lower than what somebody else is willing to accept. So I can risk more. I can put it more out there because I'm like, I look back and I'm like, I was never really, I say I was unhappy is what pushed me towards this, but I mean, I'm comfortable. If it wasn't for my family, I mean, I'm comfortable sleeping on the ground in a bedroll, somewhere, not owning hardly anything. And it was really my wanting to be the provider of my family that pushed me further. So I'm like, but I also know like we've done it, lived broke or whatever. I'm like, as long as we're together, it's going to be good.
Well, and I think a lot of people are like that. And I wrote something in the book. It's in one of the last chapters where I talk about principles I live by, and I say losers hate winners. But when I say that, I'm not talking about the ones that are trying. The people that are trying to do better, the ones that are out there working a 40-hour job and taking care of their family, those people aren't losers. Those people are winners as long as they are happy where they're at. When I say losers hate winners, it's the people who tell you they want more, get quiet when you're winning, but refuse to do anything to help themselves but are miserable. And those are the people I'm also talking about when I talk about living in level 2, being comfortable. It's the people who will tell you, hey, we want you to do great, but then get quiet when you do.
When you do better than them.
Yeah, every time you level up, and I hate the term level up, but I mean, basically every time you do something better, they hate it, but they haven't tried. And to me, that's that level 2. And the only way to do better in business and finance, I believe, is to get to that next level, which is the level 3 recalibration. And I think that's when the mind starts to take everything from the past and quit dwelling on it, but use it to catapult yourself into the future. And level 3 for me took a long time. I mean, I moved west, struggled for a long time, continued to rodeo, but again, had that mindset of always say yes. So I was at a BRO event one night in Laughlin, Nevada. I was about to get on my bull, and for the sake of my friendship with the country music icon that I'm about to mention, I won't say his name, but in the book I call him the big man. Most people figure out who he is pretty quick, but he came to the show. He was playing a concert across the street, but he came to the bull riding that night, and I heard him say, "Hey, Dallio," it was a nickname I picked up in Kansas, Dallio, and turn around, and here's this country music icon, and he's wanting to have a conversation with me behind the chutes, and I'm working here, man. what are we doing? And so he asked me to come over and talk with him after his concert. So I did, and he had written a script for a movie, and he was looking for a bit taller bull rider to play the bull riding parts for him, to do the stunt work for him. And I was pretty beat up at the time. I was needing some serious time off, couple broken bones, one in my arm, and I was working on one on the leg, I think. And I said, "Well, I'm pretty beat up right now." He said, "Well, film is starting in about 8 months." And I said, "Well, get a hold of me." And so I started to leave and walk out of his bus, and he said, "Hey, you ever need a job while you're beat up? Give me a call." Well, I went back to my girlfriend in Vegas after that night, and we were having problems and ended up splitting up, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So I called him, said, "Job's still open?" And he said, "Come." He said, "When can you be in LA?" I drove that night to LA, and next morning I was on the bus, and I was the backstage party coordinator. I wasn't security, I wasn't management. I was just the guy who made sure everybody had a good time. The people who were to get backstage passes got backstage passes. The ones that weren't supposed to get in didn't get in, and most of all, nobody got arrested. And
sounds like a pretty fun job.
That was a good night if nobody got arrested, and it was a fun job. But he was a demanding guy, and so after about 3 months on the road, he summoned me to the bus, and I got back on the bus. He said, "You ever heard of Next Man Up?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." He said, "Well, our rhythm guitar player had to go home to his family emergency. You're up tomorrow night." I said, "I don't play guitar." "You do now." He said, "Go pick out an outfit and go see the instrument guy, and he'll set you up with something to stay out of the lights, and you just hide behind the steel guy for a couple nights. It'll be 2 nights, it'll be over." So the next day on the way to the show, I sat knee to knee with him on the bus, and he showed me how to fake through a couple progressions. And that night was Las Vegas, and I was...
Sounds like a real Buddy Jackson story.
It was comical, and I'd like to tell you I remember those 2 nights, but I don't. But what I'll tell you is that 2 nights turned into 3 months, 4 months, and after 3 years of rodeoing in between touring with him, I finally quit him. And I look back, and it was just another one of those times where I didn't say no. It was a yes, you know. And what I learned from that is that the yellow working in my mind of the cube is that ambition part always just kept telling me forward is the answer. There's no backwards. And that's what catapulted me forward through that. I went on to meet my wife the same night I quit him in Phoenix, Arizona. We've been together ever since, 22 years. We've got a 14-year-old daughter. When I quit him, within weeks, I hadn't realized that I'd blown everything I was making on the road, not doing good things. And we were just living paycheck to paycheck, happy to be together, and that was great. But like the Kingman incident, I ended up arrested again, falsely arrested for almost the exact same thing. I took a safety job with a big construction project in Phoenix, and got arrested and accused of using the Home Depot card to buy gift cards and then selling them. But this time I was in a position where I wasn't going to let him do it to me. So I stood up and fought him, and quickly found out that it was a false accusation. I had to drop all the charges. It was another North Star steel mill type deal. And I kept moving forward, but that's when I realized that injustice was a big part of the way my mindset works. I don't like to see injustice of any kind, and it sets deep in the cube. And I think from just those 2 events alone, that's why. me and my wife would go ahead and for quite a while, we would continue to struggle. And then there was another accusation where I was falsely arrested. Spent 4 days in jail that time from a detective that was going to retire, and his niece had accused me of doing some very not nice things. And later she recanted that. And again, 100% exonerated. But all things that burned so deep in the cube during that recalibration process that it registered it, and it just kept saying, you got to do better. You can't continue to tolerate this. You got to stand up for yourself. So in January of 2010, I told my wife, I said, we're selling everything. What little we had, we were renting. We weren't even owning a home, but we sold everything. We moved into a fifth wheel trailer with 2 pit bull dogs. And I said, we're going to start a business, and I'm going to build a safety consulting staffing business. And she had a daughter, my stepdaughter, who's now 23. And I took that fifth wheel trailer and I went to Camp Pendleton out in California, and I was able to secure a contract job as what they call a site safety and health officer on Camp Pendleton. And I had to meet with the base commander and clear my name from those arrests, because there was still an arrest record, even though there was no convictions or even any court trials or anything. And he saw it. The first time I ever saw anybody see it, he looked me straight in the face. He said, "This is nonsense." I said, "I hope you understand." He says, "This isn't a mistake. This is injustice." And he called the secretary and said, "Clear this off his background." And so we built that company. And from 2010, we started that company living in a fifth wheel trailer, living on about $200 a month food allowance. So not a lot. There was no splurging, that's for sure. My wife was driving back to Phoenix every week to visit. She was a 1 week on, 1 week off with her daughter. So she'd be gone a week, and then she'd be with me for a week. And by the time my contract was over in Camp Pendleton, the contractor I was working for had asked if I could bring on another safety person for one of their other projects, and I did. And then another one. And then me and my wife accepted a project up at the Grand Teton National Park, and I was the safety guy over the park for the season, for the summer, and she worked in the medical clinic. Up in the fifth wheel we went, living up there in the fifth wheel.
What was the timeline between so from Tucumcari to where you thought you needed to start doing better and then starting your own business?
So Tucumcari was 1997, in January of 2010. So 13 years that I would say I spent in that level 3 recalibration process before I ever decided to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my previous interviews, somebody asked me why. And I looked at him and said, "That's a great question. I don't know why." Because it certainly didn't end there. From 2010 to 2015, I continued to stay in that level 3 where I was recalibrating, building systems for the business to be able to work on its own, figuring out how we were going to pay payroll. We built that business with 0 loans, no debt, completely just funding ourselves from every check we get from the client right back into paying payroll, until in 2015, we were sitting in Phoenix, Arizona with a house that was 100% paid for, 2 vehicles that were 100% paid for, $2 million sitting in the bank, and not a dime of debt. And I was talking to that guy in the gym this morning that wanted to start his own business. And I told him that story. And he said, "Well, I don't really want to get my business started until I know I have, 100,000 at least behind me and somebody's backing that I can stay comfortable." I said, then you won't succeed.
Yeah.
Then you won't succeed.
Yeah, everybody would do it if there's no risk, right?
That's what I told him. I said, find your cat food, move into that fifth wheel trailer, whatever that is, and struggle for 5 years. It'll be worth it. And you'll be putting yourself in a position where you have to win. You have to do it. Instead of saying, I said, if you put yourself in that situation, you're going to get up in the morning instead of hitting that snooze button. You're going to take that phone call from that client that you don't want to do work for because he's difficult, because you have to. That's where success gets built, is on the has tos, not the want tos. And that's one of the things that I realized over time, is that it was built off of, I had to make it work. I've got a family. During that process, we had our daughter, and that's really when it kicked into overdrive for me. Is I realized not only did I need to break the DNA cycle for me in the name, but to leave something behind for my family, so that they didn't have to go through the same struggles. And I don't believe in just handing things to our kids. I think they need to work for it. My daughter's a hard worker. I mean, she's a pain, but she's a hard worker.
Yeah, and it seems like I had this realization of probably the same you had at some point, but you're in control. If you're broke, it's fine. You're in control. You can change it. If you're fat and out of shape, it's okay. You're in control. You can change it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, is that you can get out there and change it. You can go build your own podcast. You can build your own Wealthy Cowboy show, or Joe Rogan Experience, or own safety company, or anything like that. Like you said, and it's that timeline. So that would have been 13 years till you started, and then 5 more. So 18 years. It seems, I'm sure when you're in it, it seemed like it was never going to work. Now looking back, I'm sure it was a fast, little small glitch in time. And like, I was at got into sales and self-development and all that stuff for probably not that long. I've been thinking about it for 5 years or something. I started this 2.5 years ago. I got into sales 3.5 years ago or something, and being in it and not having success, it's like, oh man, I'm never gonna make it. And Alex Hormozy says a really cool thing. He's like, when you get to thinking like, I'm ready to quit, I'm ready to give up, that's where most people quit. Yeah. So if you just stick it out a little bit further, you're going into a smaller percentage, and then before you know it, you're one of the only ones that's still going. And then you've eliminated most of your competition. If you tried to get one of those Horn Knot shirts the last time we talked about them, you probably couldn't. They sold out almost immediately, and sizes disappeared fast. So the crew at Horn Knot circled the wagon, came back ready this time with thousands of shirts in stock. But don't wait, because as much as people are loving these shirts, there's no telling how long this round will last. And they didn't just restock, they added some serious upgrades. They're introducing new styles with range vent fabric, a perforated performance material that breathes like crazy. Finally, a shirt that actually does both breeze and wicks at the same time. If you've worked in a Western performance shirt before, you know how rare that is. They've still got the feature that changed the game too, a patent-pending hidden zipper pocket with an extendable lens cloth. This is a game changer. Clean your sunglasses or your phone without untucking your shirt. These shirts are actually built to be worn tucked in and go get some work done. Longer body, proper sleeves, real working fit. Not one of those Western performance shirts that's basically designed for sitting on the couch. But they kept the look right where it should be. Classic pearl snaps, great colors, and vintage pocket designs that still feel traditional. These are the same shirts I wear to work in, and you've probably seen me wearing them right here on the podcast. They've even built a ladies line, not fake pockets or bad fits, but real Western shirts built to flatter and function. My wife Shady shows and works in these, and there's nothing else like them. Get yours today and save 20% with code Crockett at hornknotbrkwy.com. Horn Knot and Breakaway. Learn more at hornknotbrkwy.com.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely 100% true. And I tell people all the time, right when you think you're failing is probably when the momentum's about to catch you like a wave and push you forward. And you nailed it on the head when you talk about those 18 years. When you're living them, man, it just seems like you can never catch a break. It's never gonna happen. And now that I don't worry about money or building businesses, because I can do it. I have the financial backing to do it, to start new businesses. I look back and, like you said, it was really just a blink of an eye. I can't even think about, or fathom where all that time went. So quick. All those years just compressed together. And during that time, even going back to 2017, moving forward, I built a successful whiskey company that I sold. Just recently sold that in April of 2025 to a global corporation. Built the Rocking DD, which is a horse boarding and facility out in Prescott, Arizona. We still have that. It's one of the largest high-end boarding facilities in Arizona. We built a company called Low Arrow Performance Horses, which I met a young lady who had hustler mentality like I did, and I partnered with her, and she owns it 100% now, and she's killing it. But again, those yeses just kept, every time something come my way, I didn't allow them to be problems. I tell my daughter all the time. So I try to drive my daughter to school every Thursday morning, no matter what I have doing, and she hates it because I tell her it's our philosophical morning drive, and I'll ask her what she wants to discuss, and if she can't come up with something, then I bring it up. And it could be anything from value versus priority, what's the difference, to solutions and challenges and problems. And so what I try to tell her is that problems aren't problems, they're challenges. And if we look at them as challenges instead of problems, we'll find solutions for them. Most people, when they say problem, that's the roadblock right there. It stops. But if they change their mindset and look at it as a challenge, then most of the time they'll go look for solutions for those challenges and they'll overcome them. And I think that that's where a lot of people in business fail is they just see a problem, and so it stops them dead in their tracks.
And that's how businesses are started. That's what a business is solving problems.
And if you want one that's going to be really successful, then find a niche to solve. And I tell people that all the time. They say, well, what do you got? What's a good idea for a business? I said, go find something hardly anybody else is doing, but it's a challenge, and you solve that for them. You'll be successful. And in the case of our DoD consulting company, where I talked about building the staffing company, we were staffing jobs that people can't even get their foot in the door. Department of Defense military construction projects. I mean, not anybody can walk on a military construction project and get their foot in the door. And I did it by being the person on the job site at first, and then I was able to network from there. I mean, at one point I had a contractor come to me and say, hey, we need a quality control manager. Can you provide one of those? Yep. I didn't even know what it was. But I researched it. I made some inquiries to people. I found a guy that had the qualifications for Department of Defense work. I contracted him, put him on the job, and our company's been up to 250 people at our largest time, with guys spread out on military bases all over the United States. And we still continue to grow.
So that core company, that first company you started, was what do you call it? Like your safety inspector?
Yeah. So it's basically, we consider it a consulting company, but we're basically a third-party agency that provides quality control and safety oversight for military construction projects. Now, we've moved into private sector a couple times, and they'll oversee just regular construction sites too. We do a lot of the data centers that are being built out in Arizona. We oversee the safety programs for them. But that core company, Yarborough World Solutions, that is a lot of people consider it a staffing company, but we don't staff companies with our guys, because we're a third party that interfaces between the contractor and the government. So we're that third party break in between those two entities. And it's a niche market. We only have 3 competitors across the entire United States, and we've watched people try to get into that space before, and it's nearly impossible. So again, every business that I've started is almost a niche situation. I hate to out myself here, but you and I were talking about the rentals that I do around the colleges. That's really a niche. We were we went out to solve a problem. We had a cousin that went to school at Tarleton, and the problem is that she had horses, and by the time she got out there to find a place to live and found out she was in the dorms, there was really no place for her to keep her horse. Her mom didn't really want her in the dorms, just for no other reason than mom being mom, right? But so I thought, well, what if we bought some of these nicer properties, or built out new ones and rented them for a fair price to these kids that are coming in that need a place to keep their horses, and their family, wants a safe place for them to live, and they're all right around our ranches, so I think we're good neighbors. And that was another niche market that kind of just took off for us, and we went from one to multiple now. I don't know how many, and building out a few more. So I just kind of always tried to find those niche markets where there's not a lot of competition, and you know that there's a lot of demand. And I think they're out there. People just have to look for them in their area of expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to look for problems. I see opportunities everywhere now because I've like you said, like I don't see problems. Don't mean like that stops me. I'm like. That's an opportunity when the stock market or a certain stock crashes or the cattle market crashes or something like that. I'm like, oh hell yeah, this is the time to get in now.
Yeah.
Or if you see you're going somewhere and doing something, and you and your friends are all like, man, this place sucks. Like this product sucks. This whatever sucks. Somebody should do something about that. That's an opportunity to create something that solves that problem. And that's what entrepreneurship's all about.
I agree. How many times have you heard somebody say, you have to have money to make money?
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that's not true.
It's one of the ways. I mean,
sure.
It's one of the levers that you can pull. That's what, the capital markets, private equity, banks, all that stuff, they use money to make money, but entrepreneurs create money.
That's a fact, and that's what I tell people. I said, if you're waiting on somebody to give you money, you might be waiting a long time. So I'm in a position now where I've created generational wealth, and during the level 3 calibration stage, which the next is level 4 reformation, which is where I think I am at now, even though I know there's resonance and relativity 5 and 6 still up there. I don't know if I'm capped out at level 4 or not, just for the lack of education maybe, but I know those higher levels are there. But in Reformation is where I'm at now, and what I realized is that I built generational wealth, and I asked myself, and other people have asked me, why did you feel you needed to build generational wealth? At the time, I thought I was buying freedom. I've heard a lot of people say that get to a level of riches or wealth, that they were doing it because money creates freedom. And it does to a certain extent. But what I've recently found out within the last couple of years is that freedom isn't what I was chasing. I was chasing time. The ability to buy or control time. And so people ask me, well, how does wealth do that? Well, I fly on a jet. Okay, well, how does that buy you time? Well, you're sitting at the airport waiting to catch a plane that's going to get delayed. I'm already where I need to be and back. I took a trip the other day from right here in Dublin, Texas, from a little airport out there on a Falcon 900B jet, holds 14 people. I went from Dublin to Phoenix, Arizona, did a TV interview on the jet, went from there to Kingman, picked up a friend, went to Utah, picked up a friend, went to Denver Airport, did an interview, went to Casper, went fishing, and made that trip again the next day. In roughly 30 hours, I was able to do all that. So what I found was that wealth and money will allow you freedom, but ultimately the most expensive commodity in the world is time. It's the only thing we're never going to get more of.
And you don't know how much you have.
You don't. You know how much money you have, which can tell you how much freedom you have, but you nailed it. You don't know how much time you have. So it was a big reality to me. In August of 2025, I was sitting in my party barn, and it was like an epiphany. I was never chasing wealth. I was chasing time. And the wealth allows me to choose how I spend that time. And I think that's really the meaning of it all for me now, is to try to coach and help people realize that's the ultimate goal is time, and how to manage that correctly, because they're not making any more of it. You don't know how much you have left, and you can't get any of it back.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I listened to two things recently. Have you ever heard of Naval Ravikant?
I have.
His the Almanac of Naval Ravikant I listened to it on Audible. It's crazy. I've listened to it before, and I was listening to it again just recently, and he talks a lot about that. And like he doesn't schedule anything, and he says no a lot. He says he doesn't go to weddings, he doesn't go to parties. He said a lot of people think I'm rude, but I'm just like, I protect my time a lot. And he said I don't set alarms, I don't make appointments, I leave it open to what I want to do. And that was like his ultimate, buying his time back. That's the ultimate level of wealth. And the same, I was listening to an interview with Brad Jacobs, but he was talking about Warren Buffett, and he said Warren Buffett said he was the wealthiest man in the world, and that whoever was talking to him was like, no, actually you're like number 4 now or something. And he's like, no, I'm the wealthiest. He said, look at my calendar. There's nothing on it. He's That's like, facts. I can do whatever I want. I have all the time I want.
That's facts.
Still driving to check your water? Is the summertime heat hitting hard? When drought conditions set in, managing a reliable water supply for your cattle can become a full-time job. In fact, if you are like most ranchers, you're probably checking water that 95% of the time doesn't need attention. RanchBot makes water monitoring easy with near real-time alerts, reducing unnecessary trips by collecting data directly from your water sources and giving you peace of mind in even the toughest conditions. With easy installation, reliable satellite connectivity, and lifetime support from the RanchBot team, this low-maintenance water monitoring solution is a valuable addition to any operation. Join over 12,000 ranchers already managing water more efficiently and making life on the ranch easier with RanchBot. Take control of your water and start saving time and money today by visiting ranchbot.com/Wealthy Cowboy or give them a call at 512-706-9084. I'll also be giving away some RanchBot trough monitors in the Wealthy Cowboy VIP group, so check that out as well.
And I preach in my family all the time about not wasting time and not letting people waste your time, protecting your time. One of the principles I live by that I talk about in the book is just that, especially people who want to steal your time. And I specifically talk about naysayers or haters or people who just want to create havoc in your life for no other reason than they're jealous or whatever the case may be. Those are the worst kind of time wasters. And the reason for that is because it's time lost in 3 different directions. My daughter says, well, how's that happen? I said, well, first of all, you're losing time because you're dealing with it. So that's a waste of time. Number 2 is that you're going to think about it later, which is a waste of time. And number 3, any time that you have to bring it up, think about it, or deal with 1 and 2, now you've lost time for the 3rd time. So time wasters like that are ones that you have to do away with and just be done with them. And unfortunately, through my life, I found out that 90% of those people have been blood relatives. It's funny how wealth became almost so loans became obligations rather than loans, loans that were never going to be paid back. Almost just you have to do this type thing. I had a falling out with my mom and dad, and it's been 4 or 5 years ago now, but I didn't talk to them for about 2 years. And they lived down in this little town in Mexico, about 4 hours south of Phoenix, right on the ocean. And me and my wife lived down there for a couple of years as well, after we moved out of the fifth wheel, and we're still trying to scrap it together and make it work because it was cheap. And we had a little 1-bedroom casita down there, and they were living down there. I hadn't talked to them in a couple of years, and I showed up in Mexico with my family, and a social media post caught their eye, I guess. I didn't tell them I was there. And I got a text message, and I looked down, and it was from my dad, and he said, hey, you in Rocky Point? I didn't answer it, and later I went and talked to my wife, and I showed her, and she says, well, what's he want? And so I texted him back, and I said, yeah, I'm here. And he says, well, can you come by the house and see us before you go home? So I talked to my wife and agreed that me, her, and my stepdaughter and my daughter would drive over there before we went home. So we went over there, and they were on the porch when we showed up, and we walked in and sat down on a little porch area, and the usual pleasantries went by, the highs, how you been, whatever. And then my mom quickly looked at the girls and said, hey, come inside. Let's show you what we've done with the place in the house. And I immediately knew something was wrong. I knew something was up. The whole demeanor just changed, of the air, everything. And as soon as they walked inside, my dad leaned over and he says, you need to give us $3,000. And I just said, Jenna, let's go. She walked out with the kids. We got in the car and drove off, and that was the last time I ever saw them. It's funny how, and for context, for about 10 years, we took care of my parents. I mean, financially, loans we would give them, they'd be passed on to my brother. New cars, bills, 2 or 3, 4 checks of $10,000 at a time. Even put my dad to work for YWS for a while. And it just became those expectations. So that was one of those deals where I realized that family doesn't have to be blood. And one of those philosophical talks that I have with my daughter on Thursday morning when I drive her to school, I explained to her, because we have some very loyal, close people in our lives right now. My ranch manager that owns the Low Hour Performance horses now, Alexis, and her fiance Luke are chosen family. They're not blood, but they're chosen family. They've been around for a long time through the thick and the thin. And I've told her, my daughter, I've said, unfortunately, blood doesn't always mean forever family. You can have family without them being blood. They can be chosen family, and we're surrounded by that now. People who have been loyal and faithful, even when nothing was offered, nothing was promised, and part of this life that I'm building and continuing to build is not just for my stepdaughter, my daughter, and my wife, but those chosen family as well, the ones that continue to show up with no expectations. I think that's something that's become important to me to realize and pass on to my daughter and get her to understand that as well.
Was there a point in time there? Was it like as soon as you started seeing some financial success, like you started realizing all these things, or?
Yeah, my wife had been trying to tell me for a while that my family was taking advantage of me when we started to get to a financial standpoint where they saw that we were doing well, and they weren't afraid to ask, for money or tell us that they were hurting for money. But in 2015, I talk about this in the book. In 2015, I sat down with my wife at Mastro Steakhouse in North Scottsdale, Arizona, and we toasted to $2 million in the bank, 0 debt, and had steak, caviar, lobster, and toasted with Dom Perignon. It was the first time we had splurged in all those years of building the company. Probably one of the first times we'd ever even really went out and had a nice meal and celebrated up to that point. And it was shortly after that I realized, almost like winning the lottery, right? Where they say family starts to come out from everywhere with their hand out. And look, I really did try to lean into a good relationship with my family and help them out financially for a long time, 10 years probably. And then it just got to be a realization that unless there was money involved, we didn't have a relationship. And I started to look back on my youth and realize there was never a relationship. And that's unfortunate because, I truly want everybody out there to be happy, whether it's family life, wealth or whatever. But that was kind of the point I was trying to drive home to my daughter, is that because she wants to know what's, and part of the reason I wrote the book was because she says, well, who can I go ask what Dad was like when he was 8 years old? What happened when you were 10 years old? What about teens, 20? So I wrote the book kind of for her to have a literal record of my life so that people can't come back and tell her differently. There it is, the good, bad, and ugly. I didn't hide anything. I told about the rest, everything I'd went through. So I recorded it for her, but I also did it because the naysayers and the haters said I couldn't. And I showed you the page that I put in the back just for them. A lot of people said, well, it should be a coloring book. So I went back to I got to give you props. I was watching one of your podcasts, and you had said that the haters are the ones on Facebook or social media that make you the money.
Yeah.
And a light bulb went off, and I called my publisher and I said, hey, what would it take to take the cover and make it into a coloring page and make it the very last page of this book? He said, done. So it's in there now. Any book that's ordered now comes with the coloring page in the back. But so that was another driving reason, but mostly because I had always been defending who I was, who I am, and who I'm becoming, because I believe that every growth stage in your life, whether it's mental, physical, is another opportunity to ask yourself who you are. And I try to ask myself that all the time. Who are you and who are you becoming? Because I think if you do that helps you strive forward and grow in success, because you're not limited at what your mind tells you you're capable of, because you're telling your mind you're capable of more than that. What's next? I'll be 50 in January, and my original goal was to have a very tight-knit small group and have somebody running all of my companies by the time I was 50. I put this book out so that I could get my tour done and be done by January 8th of next year, which would be my 50th birthday. I was in an interview a few weeks ago, and somebody said, what's next for Dally after the book? There's been football, there's been music. I played semi-pro football for 3 years. At 30 years old, I walked on, and my wife laughed at me. She thought I was crazy. I played for 3 years
Where was that at?
A quarterback. I played for LA and Phoenix. I was 29, struggling to. It was right before we started YWS, and money was okay, but this semi-pro football league, major league, fired up, and they were holding tryouts, and so I'm gonna go try out for quarterback. I'd played in high school, and my wife fell out of the chair backwards laughing, and when she realized I was serious, she supported me, and I went and tried out, and I made it. And I remember them calling me the day they did, and they said, hey, this is Vince. He was one of the owners of one of the teams, and he said, want to give you a shot. I thought he meant another tryout. And I said, okay, when's the second tryout? He said, no, I'm offering you the job. I thought, dang, he must mean backup. And he said, come to my office, we'll build an offense around you. And I thought, oh, they're desperate. And real desperate. And so I showed up, and they did. And the first year was in Phoenix was not a great year. Stats were 50-50, won half, lost half. Next year was better. Third year I got traded, tore my labral in my arm, and we went all the way to the championship game on a torn labral in my throwing arm, and with 92 seconds left on the clock in overtime, we were down by 7, and we drove 92 yards, and we made the touchdown, and we were down by 1, and we could have went for the field goal and tied it up, but the coaches decided to go for 2. So under center, called an audible, snapped the ball, dropped back, receiver crossing across the end zone. I fired. I was hit by a linebacker, 24-year-old kid trying to make the NFL still, knocks my 30-year-old man down in the dirt. By the time I looked up, incomplete. Game over. We had lost, and it was a heck of a ride and a lot of fun. But again, one of them deals where I never said no. I just did it, and So, people ask, they say, what's next for Dally? You've rodeoed, you played football, you got thrown into touring with a major country music singer, you've built businesses, you sold a multi-million-dollar whiskey company. What's next? And I really thought when I hit 50, I just kind of wanted to fade away. I always think of the
retire.
Almost just disappear. Kind of the George Strait song, the Cowboy Rides Away. That's just kind of always been in my mind on what I thought was going to happen when I was 50.
But it doesn't happen, right? George Strait never went away. He still plays shows.
Just played Austin, I think, last weekend. And that's what I came to realize, is that I'm not done because I still have more to do. Yeah. Well, what is that? I don't know. I guess I'll figure it out. I've got a pretty busy schedule with the book ahead of me. I think between the media interviews and the book signings, it's 100 cities, starting next week in San Diego. Some of them I've already done, but San Diego and LA next week for interviews, and then Dallas, Fort Worth interview the week after that, and book signings. So I'll be mashed schedule wise all the way up till about the beginning of November. But I'm sure there's something else out there I want to do, and maybe that's coaching of some kind. Because I think I bring a little bit different perspective than maybe some business people do in the fact that this metaphorical cube that I have in my mind, I think is maybe a teaching mechanism. I've even been approached by my corporate team, said maybe we turn this into some kind of a training module for business entrepreneurs. So it might be something I look at.
I think like people. I think Naval talked about that too, but like people always think of retirement of, doing what they want to do. I mean, it's not like you're just going to quit and play golf and die. So you want to just only do what you want to and not what you have to do. And I know I think it was Willie Nelson that, he's still going, and he's 95 or something. And it was not that many years ago, somebody was like, when are you going to retire? And he's like, retire from what? I'm just doing what I want to do every day.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't plan on writing the book. And here I sit, but I think there's always something new to do. There's always something new you can do. And I have a 14-year-old daughter who is either going to go to college or take over one of the businesses, and there's plenty to do to get her through college and high school and college and her young adulthood. So I'm looking forward to those years. I'm looking forward to continuing to spend time with a great family and friend base and seeing where the next steps take us. But it's been an interesting quite a few years, and one of the people that talked me into writing this book, he said, Dally, you're one of the most interesting people I've ever met. You've lived like 7 lives in one short amount of time. How did you do that? And I told him, when I was a young kid, I heard a motto that stuck with me through my life, and I kind of always lived this way: rolling stone gathers no moss. And for some reason that just stuck with me, and that's kind of how I've always lived my life. So always the yes, right? Always forward, never backwards. So a rolling stone gathers no moss. If you continue to go, you're not going to get sucked down and stuck, right? That moss isn't going to hold you down. And then I heard Matthew McConaughey say in a podcast interview not too long ago, he said his little boy came up to him and he said, what do you want to do with your life? Matthew asked his son that. His little boy said, meet new people and do cool things. And I thought, that's where I'm at now. That's what I want to do. I want to meet new people and do cool things. Yeah. So, I think I went from a rolling stone gathers no moss to I want to meet new people, do cool things.
Yeah. Do you think, I always say this, tell people kind of how I lived my life and how I've seen people do it that have had success is like you said at first when you're starting out and you have nothing but time, just say yes to every opportunity, meet as many people as you can, see and do as many things as you can, get as much experience as you can. And then when you find something to narrow in on that you think is going to turn into something, you have to start saying no to a lot of other stuff and focus on that one thing, which I have trouble with because I like to say yes and do cool things and meet new people. But do you think that's kind of right? Is because I love saying yes, like I said, but do you think at some point you have to focus down and then, but now since you've built stuff and you built systems, maybe you start saying yes again?
Yeah. So
to what you want to do. So you're still going to say no a lot. If you didn't hear Ben Hell's story on episode 69, you need to check it out. He's been earning trust in the cattle industry one handshake at a time since 1995 at Western Livestock. Western Livestock is proud to be family owned and operated now with 5 locations: Oklahoma City, Woodward, Comanche, and Waurika, Oklahoma, and also Knoxville, Iowa. They're proud to do business the Western way with honesty, integrity, and a handshake that still means something. You can join them ringside or stream their sales from wherever you are. Western Livestock, where a handshake is their word, cattle are money, and timing is everything. If you're looking to buy or sell, contact Ben Hale at 940-631-BEEF. That's 940-631-2333. Check them out on Facebook or westernlivestock.com.
I agree with that. And one of the things that I talk about is staying too long in level 3 recalibration. I think that's part of it, saying yes too much to too many things. I had a high school teacher tell me when I was in remedial reading classes, even though I could read at a college level at the time, I'd grown up my whole life in church reading the Bible and on stage in front of the congregations in the religious organization we grew up with. But I had just filled in the bubbles on my 8th grade aptitude test going into high school because the material I was supposed to read was lame. So I just filled in the bubbles and ended up in a remedial reading class in 9th grade. And my teacher told me something I'd never heard before. She said, "Dally, you're not a D or C student." He said, "You're one of the smartest kids I've ever met. You're just not a student." And that's the first time I ever reconciled the difference between smart and educated. And that made a big difference to me. And I didn't stay in high school after that. And I'm not saying that's the choice people should make. I make my daughter go to school. But what I learned about myself is that my mind operates at a very high level. So during the time I was building all this and still saying yes to so many things, if my mind was overloaded, then I wonder if I would have said no to some of the things that truly didn't matter, what else I might have been able to do with that time. Because I can multitask beyond anything that I've ever seen anybody else do. And I've had people around me say the same thing. I can run 5-6 businesses that would take 5 or 6 different people to run, and I can do all those tasks in the amount of time that it would take one person for one company to do in a day. I do it every day. Emails, text messages, keeping up with all of that. By the end of the day, I don't have a text message that hasn't been responded to. I don't have a PM that hasn't been responded to, and I don't have an email that hasn't been responded to. And my boxes have to be empty. I can't have something sitting there waiting for me. And I've always been that way. So to answer your question, if I had said no to more, I wonder what that didn't mean anything. The waste of time stuff. Where could I be now? So since I have been doing the book and I've been really cramped, I've been saying no a lot more. And I do agree with you. I think most people have to get to a point where they have to say no because they need to protect their time. I think I'm headed into a situation where I want to say no more because I want to protect peace. I think time and peace are equally as valuable because people have to search for peace. They know time's there, but for how long, right? But ultimately, clarity or the white part of the cube is what gives me peace. And I think that's what I'm searching for moving forward is the peace. And that's where the no has to come for me because I'm always solving somebody else's problem or working on somebody else's issue or helping somebody else. And I think that's where my peace gets stolen as I'm getting older. Of course, I'm less tolerant as I'm getting older as well, even with my daughter. But I think truly I'm searching for peace along with that time, that management of time. And that's where I have to start saying no moving forward and haven't in the past, where I think a lot of people get to maybe the wealth where I'm at now and they want to start saying yes again. I don't think I've ever said no. So now it's time. Now it's time to protect it.
Yeah, just because it's fresh on my mind, I'm going to reference Naval again. He talked about that's something that I've always chased is happiness, probably over chasing wealth. But that's two things a lot of people chase is happiness and wealth. They're not just tied together. But he talks about it and he says most people think of happiness as joy, like being real joyful. But he said happiness to me is peace. He said, when I talk about happiness, I'm talking about peace. I don't have to be, full of joy. I just want to be peaceful.
Yeah.
And trying to protect that and pursue that. And that's a whole nother, lane that you have to pursue. And be intentional about.
And have you ever thought about it? What peace means to you? I mean, that's an intriguing question if you truly think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I had to ask myself just within the last couple of years. And I ask a lot of people. And matter of fact, my book asks at the very end, asks three questions, it answers two in the beginning, and then it asks a question. It says, by the end of this book, I want you to ask yourself, who are you? And then again into the book, it says, now, everything that I've told you, who are you? And most people say when they read the book, they forget it's even about me. The book was written to be about you, about the studio guy, about everybody. And everybody that reads it has told me, by the time they hit chapter 5, they've forgotten that the story is even about me, that they find themselves immersed into the story as themselves the way it's written. And that's truly what I want. And ultimately, this book is about trying to tell people how to find the peace within themselves so they can stand up in their own story.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the book, it asks the question again, okay, who are you? Have you ever asked somebody that question? Who are you? And here will be the canned answer that you get. Well, I'm a loving father. I'm a churchgoer. I'm a hard worker. Yeah, so is a million other people. But who are you? So I've asked some close friends, and I differentiate friends and pals as different. Pals are forever. Friends are fleeting and come and go. Almost kind of like some people might look at friends and acquaintances. So I've asked some pals that I know have been going through some struggling times or have in the past or are. And I've asked them, who are you? And I get that answer. And I said, no. Have you ever sat down and thought about who are you? And if you think about that question and you truly dig, it's a difficult one to answer for anybody. And I've had the three that I've asked that question, the ones that I consider pals, have all come back to me 2 years later and say, well, who are you? Read the book. You'll find out who I am. Because the bottom line is all I am is cat food. That's it. Now, who are you? And none of those three people can answer that question.
Yeah, I think like most people don't take the time to sit down and think about it. I say that a lot. Like, number one thing is like you need to sit down and define what success is. Because most people don't. Maybe they hear me say that and then they spend like a minute on it. They're like, oh, I need to have this much money or these material things or whatever. But nobody spends very much time on it. And that's like the most, I think that's the first chapter of Think and Grow Rich is a definition of purpose. Where are you going? What is success? What is the goal that you're chasing? Most people don't define that very clearly.
I agree. And most people don't know what peace looks like to them. They think they do. But to your point as well, as your life changes and you're constantly asking yourself, who am I becoming or who am I going to be next? Whether that's business growth, wealth growth, knowledge growth, and you're becoming somebody else. Do those people ever stop and ask themselves, okay, what does my peace look like now? Because it's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
As you get wealthier, more educated, more successful, your peace, your end goals are going to change. And a lot of people will sit there and they'll answer that question originally and they think that's the end. They're just getting started. Because what I thought life would look like right now is completely different than what it looked like when I started in 2010 getting serious about things. It's completely different. And I think that's where people don't realize you have to change along with it, or you will change along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same man never crosses the same river twice.
Love that one.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I've realized that is like you set these goals, and then whether you accomplish them or not, like when you start getting close to them, it's like, well, that's not even like, I need to set a different goal, like, because that's not even relevant anymore. I can achieve way more than that, and it's always changing. Peace, success, all that stuff's always changing. All your goals, all your numbers, all your ideas, everything.
It looks different for everybody at different stages in their life, just like you said. But for example, I always thought that I wanted riches till I got riches. And then I realized what I needed was wealth. And when I got to wealth, I thought I needed freedom. Once I figured out what freedom was, I realized it was about time and peace. So once I get time and peace, then what does it look like? And that's where that level 5 and 6 come in. Ultimately, level 6 being relativity, which I believe is when somebody gets to a point where they can master time. I don't mean control it. I'm not talking about going back in the future or creating more of it. It's how can you master your life within what you're given, that amount of time that you're given. And I think people have to change throughout their processes to get to that level 5. Or level 6. And I talk about all of that in the book, and I know some level 6 thinkers, and I'm not sure I'll ever get there. I'm not sure I want to. That's a pretty deep area to live in. But, when you're talking about those level 6 thinkers, I'm thinking about people like Elon Musk, and not because of wealth, just because they think beyond at least what I can fathom.
I don't think he cares about wealth.
No, not in. Yeah, and that's a different level of mindset that I admire, and not because of the wealth, but because of the. I was watching him at I think it was the summit in China, or the meeting that they have over there the other day, and he was sitting at the table and people wanted to take pictures with him, and he's making faces and everything. This guy's about to be a multi-trillionaire, with his company going public, and he's over there making like a 4-year-old or 5-year-old would be taking pictures with these people, and I just find it comical, and it almost to the point where somebody like that has to have found his peace. And I think that's where that higher level of thinking it comes in. It's where you start to master peace and time together. And for me, that's the ultimate goal, which means I can't be done when I'm 50.
Yeah, and his piece looks way different, running all those different companies. But all of this, most people don't know that all of the stuff that he's doing is not about money or building these different businesses and blah, blah, blah. It's about inhabiting other planets. Particularly, he talks about Mars all the time, but that's why he's building an AI company. That's why he's building Tesla. That's why he's building the rocket with SpaceX. That's why he's building the Boring Company. All of those would translate over to living on another planet.
Yeah.
And he's chasing his purpose. And I read the Walter Isaacson book about him, and like, he doesn't care. He'll push all his money out there, bet on himself every time. He'll sleep on the floor. He doesn't have anything material, nice things. I think I can't remember. He had a house. He might have sold it. I can't even remember if he owns property anymore or what. Like, that stuff doesn't drive him.
Yeah.
He only cares about that one thing.
And I think that's intriguing, and it's important. And one of the things that I've found myself doing over the time of building wealth is that I'm not a materialistic person either. Yeah, I'll fly in a jet, but my daily driver that I pulled up here today is a 2014 Ram EcoDiesel with 200,000 miles on it.
How'd you get 200,000 miles out of the EcoDiesel?
That's a good question. I think we got one of the anomalies because it hasn't hardly spent a day in the shop. And I have a really good ranch mechanic. But my other truck's a 2016 Ram 2500 that has 100,000 miles on it. I just don't go. I have a modest, nice home. But I see people who want to start businesses. I worked for the concrete guy I talked about when I was a young kid. This just struck me. there was oftentimes we'd work for him for a couple weeks, me and my brothers digging ditches, footers for those house pours, and he wouldn't be able to pay us for a couple weeks because he just went out and bought a new pickup truck because he just got paid for that house floor that he just poured. Couldn't afford to buy concrete for the next one, out borrow money because they spend it as quick as they get it. And to me, that's not on the same level of Elon Musk, but to me, that's not what money's about. Don't blow it as fast as you can get it, And he kind of, obviously he doesn't have to worry about money anymore, but he's willing to, like you said, sleep on the floor. I slept on couches and floors and whatever it took to make it happen. He's got that same mindset. He's going to do whatever it takes. And one of the things that I learned over time, and especially writing this book, is that I have told people, including myself, many, many times over the years, including my daughter, is don't ever let anybody tell you can't until you've tried and found out you can't. And then try again. And I think too many people in that comfort level let people tell them they can't. I'm sure you've had people tell you can't.
Yeah.
And look where you're at.
People just, that's what the negative people do, is they project their limiting beliefs on you, but it has nothing to do with you. It's just what they have in their own mind,
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with you, and anything that you think you can do it.
Yeah.
It may not be instant, but I've took that mindset now, is I can do whatever I want to do, but what am I willing to do? And like, if I wanted to go, I don't know, do something else, I could do it, but it's going to take a whole lot of time, a whole lot of effort, a whole lot of energy, a whole lot of other sacrifices. Am I willing to make those? And then you ask yourself, yes or no, yes or no. Most of the time I say no. I'm going to focus on what I'm already doing and building, and say no to the other things. Running a ranch today means managing far more than cows. You're balancing multiple enterprises, family partners, land bases, leases, inventory, equipment, and markets that move fast. But if your books and inventories live in the checkbook, spreadsheets, or buried inside of QuickBooks, you're always reacting instead of steering the business. Ambrook gives ranchers real managerial insight, not just bookkeeping. See profitability by enterprise or location, know whether hay is paying for itself, whether stockers outperformed cow-calf this year, or whether that rented pasture is worth keeping. Your balance sheet updates automatically and with ag-specific inventory management. You always know exactly what feed, inputs, and livestock you have on hand and what they're costing you. Tag receipts from the feed store, reconcile from the tractor, and eliminate the year-end scramble. Ranchers save up to 90% of bookkeeping time, and finally get numbers they can trust for family meetings, lenders, and major expansion decisions. Ambrook is built for ranching complexity, not just generic small business accounting. Try it free for a month at ambrook.com/wealthycowboy. That's AMBROOK.com/wealthycowboy.
You got to ask yourself if you're willing to give up that peace and time.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Belize on a private island not too long ago. I treated some friends to a vacation down there, which I've done a lot over the years. I believe that generosity. Me and my wife are very generous. We've taken people on some very extravagant trips, yacht trips. Getting ready to do one in June in Croatia, where we're taking 14 couples with us for 8 days on a mega yacht in Croatia, and we do that as thanks to what we've been allowed to build, for no other reason. We don't ever ask anybody for anything. There's no expectation. I call it grace without expectations. And the reason for that is because truly I'm just thankful for what we've been able to build. And I want to share that with people who may never have the opportunity to experience something like that. So we do that. But along with generosity, what I have found is that it's a teaching tool. Generosity is a quiet test. It's to see who accepts without expectation, but it also asks the giver, why are they giving? and it gives you an opportunity to look within and ask yourself the same questions that you're asking yourself about the person who's accepting. So I've actually learned that generosity can be a silent test, and I utilize that, and I'll continue to give to the ones that accept without expectation. But all too often, such as family and others, there's been plenty of others that start to expect, and then when the giving shifts for one reason or another, maybe it's just not their turn to go on the trip, you can watch people's true intentions get dirty real fast. I've watched that over the years. Give you an example. I had a very close friend that I was friends with for a very long time, and he had been on several of our yacht trips, and all they got to do is show up and go. We don't ask for anything. No, we're not looking for a thank you. We're not looking for any type of acknowledgement whatsoever. Just go have a good time. And so the third time we hosted a yacht trip, they didn't get the invitation because it was time for somebody else to go. And how quickly the nasty turned. We the expectation kicked in, I guess, and it severed a friendship really quick, because generosity will show you the true intentions of somebody. So I've learned over the years to use that as kind of a quiet test, and it will tell you a lot about people.
Yeah, I think it was Ray Wiley Hubbard that says the days I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations are really good days.
Yes.
And
yes.
But before we got on that, I was thinking about a Ray Wiley song that probably most people haven't heard, or this version. It was it was a live version, and it was "Wanna Rock and Roll," and he goes in there and he does a big long. It's one of those long, drawn-out ones, with the band intro and stuff. And he was talking about this brings up when deciding if it's worth pursuing, an opportunity is worth pursuing. But he was telling a story about a prison farm, I think in Louisiana, and they're out there working, digging ditches, and they dig ditches and knock the weeds down on the side of the road and all this stuff, like the old school prison farms used to be. And so those guys are out there in the heat, and you have those guys, the guards walking around with guns, and he's, hollering at them, telling them to work harder, blah, 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 all this stuff. They're killing themselves down there working, and walks up to these guys, and he says, the boss asked this one, he says, "Was it worth it? You're out here, you did that, crime, and now you're out here doing this. Was it worth it?" "No, boss. No, it wasn't worth it." Goes to another one, that's the same thing. "No, boss. Wasn't worth it." He goes to the other one and he says, "Well, was it worth it?" He says, that guy looks up. He goes to thinking back and says, "Yeah, it was worth it." He says, those are the guys you got to watch out for.
That's fact. That's fact.
What do you think? What do you think one skill is that somebody should work on, that just life in general to be successful? One skill or trait somebody should work on, should develop, should pay attention to?
Something I think lacks right now is customer service, customer skills. And I struggle with this one today too. And just managing your customer or your client's expectations is one that I think lacks in almost every industry nowadays. I truly believe that, and I try to teach my daughter this coming up, that doesn't matter where you get a job or what you're going to do, customer service skills are always going to be at the top of the list of importance. And I think anybody who's been to the restaurants these days, it just lacks. And so, look, I don't know what's going to happen with AI and all of that moving forward in this world. What I do know is that it's never going to take a cowboy's job. Not a real, go punching cows cowboy. And it's not going to take a waiter's and a waitress's job. Although I did go to a sushi place and had a robot serve me the other day.
I've seen those little robot deals.
I did see that in Phoenix. But customer service skills, whether you're on the phone or in person, whether you're running a tractor in a field for a client or serving them breakfast at a restaurant, customer service skills is one of the biggest disappearing traits that I've seen in people. The guy I was talking to in the gym this morning about wanting to start his own company. He's a salesperson for a major lumber company here in Texas. And I said, man, you've got the skills for it. I've heard this guy on the phone in the gym. I said, you have one of the top things that it takes to be successful. And that's being able to talk to people. It doesn't have to be sales skills, but if you can talk to people, you're going to have the sales skills. But I think that's one thing that people really need to work on, whether you've been in business for a long time or you want to get there in the future. That's number one to me.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I say communication's one of the big ones, which relates right into that.
I think that's hand in hand.
And I tell people this all the time too, like going in, the opportunity is just getting bigger because as we go into more AI and then, if robots come or whatever the future looks like of that. But as you go into more of that AI generated stuff, a lot of people aren't going to want to deal with that. They're going to want to deal with a person. And so if you can, that's a great opportunity for you to go out there and take advantage of it. And I've heard a really good quote that Mary Kay used to say. I think it's treat every person like they have a sign on their head that says, make me feel important.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a terrible job of it a lot of the times, but you think about like when you go in a gas station or go to a restaurant or something, and that person just does a little bit of effort just to make you feel important. You're like, dang, I feel good after this experience, even if it was just a small interaction at a gas station counter or a restaurant counter or a restaurant table or something. It's crazy how it can change your mood.
Yeah, and especially since we're not used to it anymore, right? I mean, when I was younger, you used to see customer service that was a lot better, but you said it, and think about this, with the AI stuff coming in, not knowing, like you said, what's going to happen, but people are going to be dealing with a robot and they're tired of it, so they want to deal with a human interaction. We're already dealing with that. Think about just trying to get somebody on the phone for customer service, and you're put through a switchboard to the point where you're sitting there talking and yelling at a telephone because it's asking you for a birthday and it can't even get that right. So we're already dealing with that. So I think you're right. As robots and stuff start to take over the world and AI starts to take over the world in jobs and positions, people are going to want that human conversation, that human communication. So I think that's absolutely part of it. The customer service skills, that's communication. That's all part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely right. Anytime somebody goes out of their way to do something a little extra, it gets noticed nowadays because so many people don't do it.
Yeah. What about resources for somebody to check out? I mean, besides your book, but other books and podcasts, YouTube videos, anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm not a big social media guy, and to be honest, you're the first podcast I ever listened to. I've got a couple more lined up that I'm starting to listen to as well, just because they're throwing me on there. To be honest with you, for me, I like to find somebody that I resonate with. In this case, I liked what you were doing with this show, and so it was easy to dig into your podcast. And then what you find yourself listening to the people that you're interviewing and your stories as well. So what I tell people all the time is find somebody that you want to emulate, that you resonate with, whether that's for me, another one is Matthew McConaughey. I don't know much about the guy, and personally, I think that his book Green Lights wasn't great, but the guy's interesting, and he's done some things that make me want to do better. So I always tell people, find somebody that makes you want to do better, and then try to dig into what that person has used and what he's doing in his life or her life that has helped them get to where they're at, and look at some of those resources that might be available to you. That's what's worked for me. I try to find people who I think have come from a similar background and done well. If you've listened to or read his book Green Lights, he didn't come from a great childhood. He tells it a little bit differently, but his thought process on the way life should look really helped carve out the way I look at a lot of things in life. So I think those are the best resources. They're people themselves. They don't have to be movie stars or musicians or football players or rodeo stars. They could be your neighbor. They could be the local business owner. I think that's your best resource. Find somebody who's willing to sit down and talk to you, to be your mentor. One of the things I didn't have a lot of until much later in life, and still lack quite a bit of, is mentors. I think that's the biggest resource for anybody right there, is find that mentor and that you feel has been successful, and use that as your resource.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I've paid for a lot of mentors, but I tell people all the time, like, you don't have to pay. Go find, if you can't afford to pay somebody, go, like you said, somebody local in town, depending on where you live. I mean, but the most successful person in town, or the most successful rancher around you, or business owner, or whatever it is. But yeah, a lot of those, I mean, you're not too far away. Maybe you got an uncle or a cousin, or, probably not too far away, a couple connections away from being able to sit down and pick somebody's brain, and they're not too far away from you. When you start trying to work your way up, those people protect their time more, so they're harder to get a hold of and get motivated to get access to.
And if you do find one of those that's up there that's willing to give you your time, don't waste their time. My number one mentor, I talk about him in the book, is a guy named Jimster. He owned a small trucking company. When I met him, I was in my 20s, and he's about 15 years older than me. To this day, he's one of my mentors, and he's a crop duster. But the guy had a different outlook on life. He didn't have the best, the greatest business sense. He was a good businessman, but what he was willing to give me was time. And sometimes that's all you need is somebody's time to have a different look at something you're looking at. So you're absolutely right. When you get somebody that's finally got to that next level, or they're getting to that next level, and they give you their time, don't waste it. Mm-hmm. Be willing to use it wisely, or they'll stop giving it to you.
Yeah. Tell you to do something, and you don't go do it, and then it's like, oh, I don't want to jack with you anymore.
Well, and let me give you a perfect example. I have several friends, the same ones that have asked me, what's my risk tolerance, have asked me, and some of them, their wives, have asked, hey, would you give us some advice? What do you think about A, B, and C? And at first, over the first couple of years, I would give them my advice. I would sit there and listen, and I know that I've spent hours with these people trying to coach them and give them the answers that they're looking for, or at least the advice that they're asking me for, only for them to go do the complete opposite. And then when it fails, they're sitting there going, well, why did that fail? So I just stopped giving them access to my time when it comes to those types of things. And now they want that time, and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that too. It's like, what do you think I should do about this or that? And then you tell them your opinion, they don't go do it. So then the next time you're like, we're not talking about that anymore. We can hang out or whatever, but I'm not going to give you any more advice.
I'll drink a beer with, and I like that you use the word opinion, because that's what I told one of these guys. Was on my recent fishing trip up in Casper, Wyoming. He had said something about his wife being angry that I gave him the opposite advice last time because they hadn't listened in the past. So I gave him the opposite. And I said, I didn't give you advice. I want you to remember I used the word opinion this last time.
All your world travels, where's your favorite place to eat?
My favorite place to eat, Chad Decker, Hard 8.
Give him a plug there.
give him a plug. I do like Hard 8, but my all-time favorite place to eat was this little beachfront bar in Belize, and me and my wife went there over Christmas with my daughter last December, and we were just roaming around on a golf cart, and we pulled up to this little beachside bar, and it was the San Pedro Cafe, and we sat down not expecting much, and I ordered this lobster burrito. Oh man, I'll travel all the way down to Belize just for that lobster burrito.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite place that I've ever eaten. Just the ambience, the food, the service, everything is amazing. But around here, if I'm going to go get a meal, I'm at Heart 8.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
So tell everybody where they can find your book, where they can look you up. All that stuff.
Yeah. So A Night in Tucumcari, The Life of Dalio is a #1 bestseller. It also in 6 categories. It hit #1 in 6 categories. You can find it on Amazon by either Googling Dalio or Night in Tucumcari. You can get it on Barnes and Nobles. It's at most every retail, Walmart, Target. Order it online. Barnes and Nobles are starting to get their deliveries in the actual stores here over the next month or so. But right now, Amazon's probably your best bet because they ship for free and usually have it the next day.
Is it on Audible yet?
So I go into the studio June 3rd. I'll be, they said estimating 10 4-hour days to record the Audible. So by 4th of July, my publisher is telling me that they should have it uploaded into all the major retailers, online retailers for purchase in Audible, iTunes, and whatever the other ones are.
The audiobook.
Yeah, the audiobook. So that should be ready by around 4th of July.
Cool. Are you on, I know we talked on Facebook. Are you on any of those platforms at all very much? Or?
Yeah, so my publisher has a page for us on Facebook. It's just simply Dalio. All the updates are on there. It receives 3 or 4 posts a day, and then my tour schedule is on there. My interview schedule is on there. Author Dalio on Instagram, Author Dalio on Twitter or X, and then just Dalio Yarborough on LinkedIn. All those are social media platforms where the publisher publishes all the updates, not just with the book, but the book trailers and all the advertising and stuff that they do throughout the week. Biggest thing I can say is that for me, this book was not written for the money. I don't need it. I truly wrote this book not as a self-help book, but ultimately people are saying that this is a book that'll give you an introspective look at yourself through the reading of my story, and that's truly why I wrote it. I wrote it for people to have something that helps them to whatever that next level is, whether it's level 1 to 2 or 2 to 5. But ultimately, at the end of it, I just want people to be able to stand up in their own story.
That's cool. Yeah, y'all go check out A Night in Tucumcari. There's a lot of stuff we probably didn't go into super detail. I'm sure it's in the book during this interview, so we're definitely gonna have to read it after this. And y'all go check it out, and we'll see y'all next time. Real quick, if you're a listener of this show and you're serious about leveling up your income, your mindset, and your life in 2026, you need to join the Wealthy Cowboy VIP community. It's where the real action happens. You'll get exclusive discounts from our sponsors, VIP merch deals, early access to episodes, private Q&As, and I even pull questions from the group to ask our guests on the show. It's a crew of driven Western people pushing each other to grow. The link is in the description. Go join now and see what's happening inside.